Good morning. You're watching Business World Live. I'm Jes Delos Santos. It's the start of a new business day, but first, let's go straight to our top story. Investments approved by the Board of Investments dropped 17% to 826 billion pesos in the 10 months to October. Trade Undersecretary and BOI Managing Head, Ceferino Rodolfo, said that while this amount is lower than the approvals in 2019, the agency is still on the course for its second highest level in its history despite the pandemic. Despite the lockdown, board-approved investments doubled in the first half of the year, led by Senegal's 740 billion peso airport project in Bulacan. Domestic investments in the first semester soared over 166% to nearly 627 billion pesos, but foreign investments plunged by almost three-fourths to 18.6 billion pesos. The BOI breached its 1 trillion peso full-year investment by October last year. The government now plans to focus on the automotive, aerospace, electronics, as well as BPO and nickel and copper industries for new investments. The government earlier launched an investment promotions campaign called Make It Happen Philippines. The UK-assisted initiative will release marketing ads across social, digital, and print media. Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez said there are around 90 leads from potential investors with a potential investment valued at over $24 billion. Now, here are the biggest stories in the corporate front. Telco giant PLDT said it will be laying down underground fiber optic cables in typhoon-prone regions in the country. That's after the back-to-back typhoons that struck Luzon earlier this month. Philippine Star reports that PLDT has installed fiber optic links in Catanduanes and will do the same for areas in the Bicol region and in Samar province. PLDT has invested over 260 billion pesos in the digitalization front in the past 5 years, as it seeks to expand its fiber optic network coverage to over 395,000 kilometers by the third quarter. The company said it's targeting to migrate 100% of its DSL subscribers to fiber and fiber-like services next year to ensure high speed in all fixed lines. Now, over in Metro Manila, PLDT said they are trying to improve speeds in more cities to an average of 30 Mbps. Now, heads up to customers in Metro Manila's West Zone. Maynilad says rotational service interruptions being experienced will be extended until November 29. The water concessionaire said this is due to a delay in the removal of sludge from one of its 3 sedimentation basins in the La Mesa treatment plant after the impact of Typhoon Ulysses. Maynilad said one of its sedimentation basins is already fully operational, while the other one is currently being refilled after the sludging activity. The concessionaire advised customers that the actual service interruption experience would shorten after continuous buildup of water pressure in pipelines. Maynilad said water service will be fully restored in most areas in Maynilad's concession before November 29, and only those living in the highest and farthest may experience interruption until that date. Cities in NCR's West Zone are Caloocan, Pasay, Parañaque, Las Piñas, Muntinlupa, Valenzuela, Navotas, Malabon, Manila, Makati, and Quezon City, as well as some parts of Cavite. Now, food and beverage company URC is trying its hands on rubbing alcohol production as demand for sanitation products persists amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The Gokongwei-led firm said it's diversifying its product line to include 2 pharmaceutical-grade alcohol brands, Shield Plus and BioSure. The rubbing alcohol line will be handled by URC's Agro-Industrial and Commodities Division, while its La Carlota distillery in Negros Occidental will supply the ingredients. URC noted that sales of rubbing alcohol surged during the onset of the pandemic to 1.8 billion pesos in the first quarter. This is already nearly half of last year's 4.1 billion peso value. As early as July, URC has secured board approval to include the production of pharmaceutical-grade alcohol as its secondary purpose. This is to leverage the company's sugar distillery facilities in producing bioethanol fuel products from sugarcane. Various industries were forced to pivot as the pandemic dragged on. The property space included. This as the trend seems to be moving outside the metro. Now, to talk about that, we have a member of the panel of judges of PropertyGuru's Philippine Property Awards, Jen de Castro. Good morning, Jen. Great to have you here with us. I think we should be switching places by now. All right. So one interesting point here that we've noticed, at least in the property market, particularly in the office demand, you have lots of data pointing to weakening market in NCR. For one, you have Castro saying the average vacancy, in fact, is already up over 7% from 5% previously, and that's for 2 consecutive quarters. How exactly is the pandemic tempering demand here in the metro?
Well, we've seen several brokers, including, for example, JLL, mentioning that there has been an increase in vacancy in Metro Manila. And we see this as, until now, we have underutilized office spaces here in Metro Manila with concerns of the pandemic and the shift towards work from home. Now we see a shift now towards office spaces outside of Metro Manila. There's interest there, and this is really linked to business continuity. We have a lot of international firms, or usually outsourcing and offshoring firms, that are looking for other hubs outside of Metro Manila for business continuity purposes, and that is what is also increasing the demand outside of Metro Manila.
But that's also considering the fact, that these figures, most of them, of course, are from the second to third quarter here. But now you have restrictions being eased, and a lot of businesses already slowly at least, moving back to their physical offices here. Do you see actually take up remaining slow even as restrictions are relaxed?
You know what? That is a great debate right now, right? Whether the work from home will really work in the long term. And in the Philippines, we do have challenges wherein homes, not all homes, are equipped for having a separate office for that, as well as internet, electricity, and even air conditioning can still be a problem. So we do still see, of course, a demand for office spaces, but then it seems to be now a question of not having one central location, but creating what they call hub and spoke, wherein we will see maybe different office centers spread out across the city or even outside of Metro Manila. For even in our experience, our employees who had to go home to the provinces, we are considering opening up office centers closer to home where they are.
How much of a factor also, Gene, are POGOs, especially a lot of them having to shut down over the period, and the BPO is actually already taking their spot as well?
Yeah, so we do still have our offshoring and outsourcing firms really taking up a big chunk of the office spaces, and even outside of Metro Manila, when you look at, for example, Cebu and Davao, it's really the offshoring and outsourcing firm that are taking up the demand. So of course, that's going to take the POGOs leaving will cause a big hit for the office market, but we still do see demand getting picked up by these other firms, as well as even local firms that are formerly just placed in Metro Manila would also now start looking at creating office spaces outside of the cities.
All right. I mean, this is something that you've been mentioning, a weak demand in Metro. Does that automatically translate to shifting interest towards the provinces?
You know what? I believe that the interest in the provinces was actually a growing trend already, right? That was accelerated by the pandemic, because creating these properties do not happen overnight. But we do see that being strengthened by the interest to be working closer to home and creating these townships, right? Where you work, live, and play kind of in the same area. And even internationally, the trend towards a 20-minute, right? That everything would be 20 minutes away would also further enhance the demand for these locations where everything is already there and not everyone have to move towards the city. Even with the traffic concerns prior to the pandemic, that has already been pushing this trend as well.
Where exactly do you see these new opportunities shifting outside the metro? Are there specific areas here that are at least points of interest?
Yeah, you know what? We in the Philippine Property Awards, we've interestingly seen entries from the provinces for offices. We've seen them from Davao, from Cebu, and even places like Bacolod, Iloilo. I think these are very interesting, what they call new wave cities, for these developments to come in, where offices are now being considered, and again, township developments where people can work and play, all in one place. So we're creating these lifestyle communities, right? It's almost like a resort type of living, instead of just the usual office buildings that we have.
And so, what does this say about property consumers, especially like what you mentioned? A lot of the developments now, especially those that are in demand, are lifestyle focused developments. So, what exactly does this tell about property consumers now, especially amid the pandemic?
You know what, they're definitely more demanding now. They want more for less, right? And they want more from their homes, from where they live. And I think the pandemic highlighted that they want things nearby. And if you're going to be stuck in a place for so long, like your home, it has to have more amenities, right? So they're looking at like a country club type of living. So these properties that have better amenities and resort like features, right? And even we see these developments already start adapting to work from home, better internet connections, they have co-working spaces. So we see that consumers are now wanting more, even from whether it's residential or office. They seem to have better interest, especially as to wellness and health. I think that's one thing we shouldn't forget, that they are now also very concerned when it comes to their own health and wellness, as well as with the environmental concerns that we're facing now.
And it's very interesting that you mentioned that because, for one, you have a lot of studies, data, in fact, pointing, that it's the demand for the luxury and upscale condominiums, in fact, that's been fueling, the property market here in the metro. Do you see that trend actually being sustained even post pandemic?
Yes, I think that growth has been very strong even prior to the pandemic, right? It was really the low cost socialized housing and then the high end luxury market. So that will continue to happen, and that continues to be supported even right now. With it, even with our entries for high end luxury markets, it didn't seem to have as much trouble with in terms of sales even during the pandemic. However, we do see an increase when it comes to house and lots outside the provinces. Maybe places outside of the cities, mid-range. So we believe that will still continue as well.
Okay, since you mentioned that already, how does this play for provincial developers? Are we expecting stiffer competition?
It's very interesting. In the provincial developments that we're seeing, it's not anymore an invasion of giants, as they say, right? Where in the Manila developers really go there and make their own projects. We see local, homegrown developers really putting up their own projects, and we see that it's great to see, right? Because you see a more adaptation to what the community wants, more local design, a more homegrown talent. So I think they understand their market better, and they're able to somehow provide more than what would usually be cookie cutter developments to their local communities. So we're seeing strong growth in that area, and even smaller developers in Metro Manila are also looking outside of Metro Manila. So I think that's going to be very exciting for in terms of both supply and demand.
And one final question, Jean, before, of course, you promote your event for the evening. I just want to ask as well, it's very interesting here. We did see remittances actually picking up in September, but then full year, that's still expected to decline. How strong still is the OFW market when it comes to property spaces?
You know what? In speaking to some of to some of these developers, we do have some pre-terminations. They did experience some of that, but not to a big extent. I think that still remains to be potential from that market. While we don't have the exact numbers, we do hope that will still continue to grow, because sales, if not, we're also shored up by local consumers, not just OFW. So that remains to be seen.
Again, you have an event tonight. That's the Philippine Property Awards. Tell us more. What should our viewers expect?
Yes, so tonight it's the 8th PropertyGuru Philippine Property Awards, where we'll be recognizing developers, not just in Metro Manila, but also around the Philippines. We'll be awarding and recognizing developments from all over the country. And it's very exciting, as we also point out projects that point to community development, look at social impact, and also environmental design. So we hope you can join us tonight to see who will be our big winners.
And of course, you will be one of the panel, a member of the panel of the judges. Again, thank you very much, Jean De Castro, for your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Chester. Nice to see you.
Now we'll have more news and Business World Live returns. Stay with us. And good morning. You're still watching Business World Live. I'm Jes Delos Santos. The Transportation Department is starting to seek bidders for the construction of various parts of the South Commuter Railway project. Packages on offer include building and civil engineering works for the project's viaducts, bridges, 9 stations, and depot. The agency said works will be procured through an open competitive bidding in accordance with the procurement policy of ADB, which finances the project. The DOTR added that bids must be submitted to the PSDBM office in Manila by March 23. ADB says the project will support the construction of the 54.6-kilometer Blumentritt to Calamba section of the North-South Commuter Railway connecting Metro Manila and Calamba. Now, income inequality is expected to worsen in Asia-Pacific economies that spent less on social safety nets and welfare during the pandemic. That's according to a report by Moody. Capacity to raise spending will face challenges in tackling income inequality. Moody's explained that low spending is causing most emerging markets to have weak safety nets. The Philippines is included in countries with low social spending in the region, together with India and Indonesia. Moody's added, though, that the Philippines' sin taxes provided a boost to social protections. The country, along with China and Indonesia and Pakistan, were noted for increasing welfare assistance under conditional cash transfer programs. A survey from Transparency International shows that more Filipinos believe corruption remains to be a big problem in the government. But on the flip side, Filipinos are also confident that the government is doing well in tackling corruption compared to its Asian neighbors. Results of this year's Global Corruption Barometer Asia showed that as much as 85% of Filipinos believe that the government is doing a good job in addressing corruption, better than the Asia average of 61%. 64% of Filipino respondents, meanwhile, believe corruption has decreased in the last 12 months, while only 24% believe that it increased. Despite this, 86% of Filipinos believe that corruption in government is a big problem, the 6th highest in Asia. The boost in e-commerce and online activity in the country due to the pandemic has been unprecedented, but with that comes growing cybersecurity threats. To talk about how they help cyber-proof businesses, we have AJ Dumanhug, Chief Information Security Officer over at Secuna. Thank you, AJ, for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Jess, for having us or having me in
All
your
right.
show.
So first off, give us an idea, AJ. What exactly is Secuna, and what's your brand of cybersecurity all about?
All right. Okay. Thank you. So Secuna is actually a marketplace of vetted and trusted cybersecurity professionals all over the world. So we are a company that who is ready to help organizations and governments as well in finding whatever is wrong in their websites or mobile applications. And it's like parang we come in and manage to break their assets, their websites or mobile applications, but we tell them on how we do it or how we did it. So how we broke their application, how we find vulnerabilities in a
Mhm.
detailed way, so that their development team or technical team can replicate the vulnerability and fix it before black hat hackers or bad hackers exploited it for their own personal gain. So in Secuna, we are not just helping organization to get more secure and prevent potential risks that could possibly affect millions of users. We are also helping professionals during this pandemic to build a career in themselves and find meaning in their lives.
Okay, very interesting that you mentioned about how you aggregate actually a number of cybersecurity firms to help businesses now. What I
Yeah.
wanted to know is, did you see a pickup in interest here? Was there a surge in clients wanting your services during the pandemic?
Yeah. Actually, we receive a lot of inquiries during this pandemic because of the remote work transition during the pandemic. So marami yung clients right now na nag-transition from physical stuff to remote working or something. So they want us to secure their applications online and remotely. So we also help a lot of organizations, to be honest. Like if you're familiar with Rapid Pass, Relief Agad, Dashboard Philippines, every applications or projects that is related during the pandemic and with the government or in partnership with the government, we help all of them to secure yung mga information that they gather from the users of in the Philippines. So yeah.
Did you notice well an increase in cybersecurity risks during the pandemic, and what exactly are the most common type of risks that you at least noted or noticed during the period?
All right. Yeah. Actually, there's a huge increase of technical risk and privacy risks when it comes to cybersecurity. So most of us are now doing everything we did before the pandemic offline. So that is like even the academe stuff, educational stuff, even the work stuff is ano na remotely na and through online. So most more users are being targeted by cyber criminals, and there are a lot of vulnerabilities being discovered every day that could possibly affect those users. So yeah, so
And what
it is indeed that there's a surge in risks when it comes to cybersecurity.
and what does that say about the security landscape here in the country?
Okay, it's a good one actually. So right now, actually, we are not yet ready to, especially in the government, because most of the work stuff is related to the government when it comes to business stuff. And for us in Secuna, we saw that there's a huge risk when it comes to cybersecurity, and our security landscape right now in the country is not yet ready when it comes to cybersecurity attacks and etc.
Okay, now give us an idea here, AJ. What's your outlook here for the cybersecurity space in the country? How do you actually encourage more companies to beef up their cybersecurity efforts and operations, especially considering that much of the perspective as to why companies actually do not prioritize this because of the cost.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Actually, there's a problem right now to many organization based here in the Philippines. So actually, hindi sila they don't prioritize cybersecurity. To be honest, kasi like it's like parang gagawa lang sila ng action when it comes na parang na breach or na security breach niya yung kanilang application, like what happened to other organization like Jollibee, Wendy's, etc. So my recommendation to those organization is to adapt the modern cybersecurity by talking to external party services when it comes to cybersecurity to beef up their security measures in their company.
Okay, definitely a worthy investment to actually beef up your cybersecurity efforts. We're talking, of course, about businesses here. Thank you very much for your time, AJ Dumanhug, Chief
Thank
Information
you.
Security Officer of Secuna. Thank you, AJ. And that's a first look into the business day this Wednesday, November 25, 2020. Catch us again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. I'm Jes Delos Santos. We are One News.